Welcome to Talk Heathen. Today's ooh, yeah. See, I gotta like the canned applause. Well,
yeah, right?
Well, actually, so the applause is taken from Talk Heathen shows.
Yeah.
Vern mixed it all together from our actual audience before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very nice. All right, so today is July 26, 2020. It is season 4, episode 30. There we go. My goodness. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm Bianca.
Hey, V.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. I have had lots of coffee and no food, so I'm ready. My fuse is short. So
Ooh, it's going to be one of those days. Nice. Okay. I can dig it. Well, so before we dive into calls, there are a couple of announcements.
Mm-hmm.
There are regular ones, like the fact that Talk Heathen is a product of the Atheist community of Austin. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And if you'd like to support us, you can go to patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. That's patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. 2/3 of the way through the episode, I thank our top 5 patrons.
I remembered. So impressive.
I do have Patreon up on the computer, and I'm going to refresh it right before we thank patrons. So if you want to hear your name today, you can go to patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. If you want to get your hands on some merch,
look at that.
got a mug, right? bit.ly/AEN merch. You can get a Talk Heathen mug and all kinds of other awesome Talk Heathen gear. Oh, so that is awesome. As always, the cast, of
nonprofits
are going to be in the Discord after the show. So
at 3.
Yes, and if we finish early, we're going to hop into the Discord as well.
Yeah,
which will be fun. Let's see. Before we move in, there are a couple of other things. Number one, I want to say happy birthday to a couple of people. We don't normally do this. I've done it a couple of times, but this week is particularly busy. And so Mark Vanderbrake, Katie Stewart,
yay.
Lily, Jenna Belk, happy birthday. We love you. We're thinking of you, and we hope you have a wonderful day today. That feels good. Also, did you know that there was a Talk Heathen fan group on Facebook that was created?
I did. I think I may have posted in there once or twice as well.
I did too. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, so if you want to interact with us or other fans of Talk Heathen, feel free to check that out.
Yeah, it is not an ACA Facebook page. It's a fan Facebook page.
Yep.
But I'm really liking it, and I'm hoping to see it grow. It should be fun.
Yeah. Also, we get to plug other stuff there too.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on that.
Absolutely. All right. Are you ready to dive into calls?
I am, and it looks like we've got a couple, which is exciting.
Absolutely. Let's start by talking to Jeff in Pennsylvania. Jeff, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about? Hi.
What's up, Eric?
Hello.
V.
Hello.
It's your buddy Jeff from Philly.
Hey, Jeff. Long time no talk.
Hey, what's that? Yeah, man. So I don't know what the screener put on your thing in front of you, but I always call with pretty much the same topic, which is faith.
What we have is faith is inescapable for everyone.
Yeah, like everybody. It's like nobody can say I don't use faith.
Well, it depends on how you define faith, doesn't it?
Well, it's just trust. It's the thing that when you affirm something is true, you have faith in that thing.
Well,
right? Everybody does that.
Do you remember our definition of faith? Because
I've heard the definition. I've heard the definition said that faith is believing something without evidence, and I know that that's impossible.
Okay,
faith can't exist without evidence. Faith can't exist without evidence. That's impossible.
Okay, so do you think that there's just enough evidence of a miracle as there is of gravity? Are they all equal in your eyes?
There's levels of evidence. I would agree, but there's always evidence. There's always evidence. That's the point.
Okay, so what's the difference between faith and belief?
There is no difference. That's the same thing.
Okay, so then let's make those words mean different things so we can have a more nuanced conversation. If you're saying everybody believes things, we agree. If you're saying everyone has faith, then we need to agree on definitions and go from there. But if you're just saying everybody believes things, cool. I mean, we're not arguing with you.
Yeah,
there.
that's an important, Eric. That's an important thing to really highlight and focus on for a moment. Like, take a moment and just focus on that, because now there's a sentence that I've heard over and over again in a lot of these conversations, like especially from Mr. Dillahunty. He says, "I can believe anything on faith." Now, let's take apart that sentence. I can believe
let's not,
anything.
Let's not strawman people who aren't here.
Right. Well, talk to us. What have we said? Don't bring someone else into it. We don't want to put words in Matt's mouth, and I'm sure you don't either. So let's talk about what we think.
Can I ask you, do you agree with that statement?
Personally, I think that faith is not a very good tool to use, and so I try to avoid believing things purely on faith.
But the reality is, my brother, is none of us can escape that.
You're using a different definition. You're using belief the same way. You're using faith the same way we use belief. So if we don't agree on how we're going to talk to each other, we're going to talk past each other, and this conversation will be useless.
Well, I'm saying those you don't agree that those are synonyms. Belief and faith are not synonymous.
Colloquially, yes. But if you're having a nuanced conversation the way we are having a nuanced conversation, then either you need to make a distinction or
use one or the other. You can't interchange the two.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about belief, then we'll take the word faith out and just talk about belief.
Okay. Let's just talk about belief.
Cool. Do we have a disagreement there?
We all have beliefs.
Yep.
Okay.
Your belief?
When we believe something, now when we believe something, what I'm saying is belief always has evidence. That's why belief is the response to evidence.
So if you, well,
here's the thing though.
Here's
the thing though. You can find evidence of some quality to back up almost any belief. I think that's initially what Matt probably was getting at, is if you want to believe something, if you want to have faith in something, you can find some evidence that you can accept that will bolster that belief. Now, the thing is, we want to minimize how much we use faith or belief in this instance as much as possible and be as sure as possible that things are true. So that requires that we need to determine what kinds of evidence are good and what kinds of evidence are less good. So when I say that I don't have belief in your system of your worldview, your religion, whatever it is that you're bringing to the table, it's not saying that I don't think you have any evidence. I'm saying that the evidence that you have provided does not force me, does not convince me to believe what you believe. So you need to bring better evidence. I'm not saying you don't have any. I'm saying that it's not good enough.
I just think it's very important for us to recognize that all of us, when we are confronted with truth, in other words, the evidence for truth, right?
Oh, those are big words. What does that mean? What is the evidence? What is truth in this instance? Is it that which comports to reality?
Truth. Yeah, truth is objective reality, that which comports to reality. Like when we bring evidence for that, all of us have to exercise faith at that point.
Okay, well, let's stick to belief. If you're saying they're synonyms, then let's stick to belief.
Okay, all of us have to exercise belief at that point.
Okay, so if belief,
that's important. That's important. That's important to recognize and realize. Like that's a really big thing to realize that we're in this boat of. And there was I was listening to another conversation you guys I think had probably last week, with regard to subjectivity and objectivity, right? And the brother was trying to bring out how we're all subject to subjectivity, right? We all have our own point of view. So, we're all receiving information in a subjective manner. And because of that, in the end, we all have to exercise belief.
Do you know
we
how
can't escape it.
Well,
Hold on.
Here's the thing. Do you know how we determine which subjective experiences are more likely to be true and which are less likely to be true?
We use our senses and our minds.
We use science. That's
And
how we
science
learn.
is other people's testimony. It's other people's senses and their minds, and we hear their testimony, and we receive that by faith, by belief. We believe what they say.
I got you, Jeff. You might want to back off the phone just a little bit. It's starting to
Get a little crunchy.
Yeah, when it kind of maxes out its volume, it starts to fuzz, and so it's starting to fuzz. So you might be a little too high on it. No worry, I do that too. So just okay. So
sorry about that.
No, it's all good. So there are a couple of things there that you said that I kind of want to address. Number one. Is it feels to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels to me like you are saying that both of them are equal.
Both of them being?
Both of the things that you accept to be true and the things that I accept to be true are equally true because we accept them to be that way.
No, I'm saying that we are both having to exercise belief.
I don't think we exercise belief.
We're equal. I'm saying we're equally subject to belief is what I'm saying.
So Jeff, I don't think we actually choose our beliefs, and I don't think we exercise beliefs. I think what you accept to be true is entirely dependent on how you are able to decipher the world around you. And if you decipher the world around you and you come to a conclusion, that is what you believe. Not because you chose because you could lie to yourself, right? I could lie to myself and say, Jeff, I believe I can fly like a bird. That would take a lot of work for me, and I wouldn't really believe it. I'd be deceiving myself. So first off, when you're saying you have to practice belief, I don't think you practice or choose your beliefs. What you accept to be true is entirely subject to how you interpret the world around you. Can we agree on that?
I can agree that we interpret those things, and then after we interpret those things, there is another step we take. We choose to believe it.
No, we don't.
Do you choose actively to believe that gravity exists? Do you experience it and then decide whether or not you choose to believe in it?
I experience it, right? I fall down. Right. And we could say that's gravity. That's an experience that I had. Right. Now, if someone asks me, do I believe in gravity? Yes, I do. And I have experienced it. Now, have I made a choice? Have I made a choice in this situation? Actually, no. It's almost like what I'm saying about believing. We're subject to that. So
if we're subject to it and we have to, then we can't make a choice. It's one or the other. It can't be both.
Well, if I'm presented with a set of so-called evidences, right, and I mull them over in my mind and I say, you know what, that makes sense to me. And then I say, you know what, I believe that. Now, that is a choice. Would you agree?
No.
No, because if you are synthesizing, if you synthesize the information and that information is compelling enough, you are going to change the way you view the world. Again, like whether or not you believe it. Whether or not you make the choice.
All the information that I got, in other words, all the so-called evidence that either someone told me or I made an experiment, all of that stuff that I got through my senses, right? All of that information is before my mind. And as that is before my mind, I'm telling you, this is where I'm disagreeing with you. I'm telling you that we all look at that and we say, now I believe that.
Jeff, you said something really interesting that both of us kind of cued in on here. And that is, you said it's before your mind. Yeah. If you're processing something without your mind, what are you processing it with?
I never said I was processing something without my mind. I said all of that stuff, I'm getting information.
Your mind gets that information, Jeff. It's at the same time.
Right.
So no, it is not before your mind, which does not make sense. As you're getting the information, it is being processed by your mind. Unless you're talking about information.
For example, let me give you an example, make it a little more clear. So a scientist does an experiment, right? Mm-hmm. He brings that to me. He tells me, look, I did this, that, or the other. And in fact, he even gives me the information that allows me to also do the same experiment that he does. Mm-hmm. All of this stuff that we're talking about is information he gave me, and then also when I do the experiment, my mind is processing the information that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So when I say before my mind, what I'm saying is my mind is the nexus or the place where.
So we're putting it before your mind, as in like
I become aware of everything in my mind. I'm aware. That's the subjectivity that the other caller that I was talking about from last week was talking about. That's the subjectivity.
Yeah.
All of us deal with everything from a subjective point of view.
We seem to be going all over the place here.
And we're going in circles.
Yeah. So here's the thing. From your statement, everyone believes something. Everyone exercises belief about something. The implication there that I'm taking from it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is a bad thing, or that this is something we should minimize?
It's not. I wouldn't say it's bad. Some people might say it's bad, but it's just it's like the conundrum that I hate to bring Matt into it, but I love Matt. But he's flailing around because that's our lot in life. We must have faith. Because we don't have absolute knowledge of anything.
Hold on, stop. Wait, pause right there. Hold on. I'm planting my flag on this hill. So it is not binary. In your example, when somebody was bringing you this evidence and talking about this experiment, as you were listening to it, you would have been assigning a confidence value to it. How confident are you? Is it less likely to be true? Is maybe 50-50? Is it more likely to be true? And as your confidence rises, that's where your assessment about whether or not it is true comes in. Right. Yes, we are stuck being subjective, right? You are limited to your senses. I'm limited to my senses. And when we want to talk about objective things, it's because we agreed on the objective or we have defined it as such. That's when we can get to deductive arguments. We can totally do that. But what you're talking about, the subjective experience, is something that we're both dealing with. And so the fact that you're saying, well, it's your subjective and my subjective, I think that's a red herring. I think it's trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I don't like that, man. And I'll tell you why. Because it doesn't matter, right? We're doing our best to understand the world around us. That does not make your belief and my belief equal. I can believe something batshit crazy, Jeff. In my subjective experience, back it up.
You're misunderstanding me. I'm not saying that what we believe is. I'm not saying that what we each would believe is equal. With the equality that I'm pointing out, and I think is very important in all of these discussions, is that we both. What we both.
If you're gonna say the same thing again, it's belief. If that's all you want to say is that you believe things and I believe things, then I think that might be as far as this call goes. But if you are going to force your definition on us and then try and expect that maybe every time we use the word faith, we're using your definition, then that's a dishonest tactic because you're not actively listening to us and meeting us where we are. And that's not okay.
Okay, I'm not trying to force anything. I'm trying to get an understanding. I told you guys before, I'm not about the obfuscation, and the whole point of these conversations is so that we both come to an understanding. So I'm not trying to bogart you, but I am trying to. When you quickly say, okay, well, if I'm just saying the same thing over and over, and you're saying the point that I'm making is irrelevant and it's non-consequential. I want you to pause for a moment. I'm begging you, please, both of you, to pause for a moment and realize that what I'm saying isn't inconsequential, because it's very important to realize that if it's true that all of us, no matter what thing that we ultimately affirm as being true, we still have to cross the bridge of faith. In other words, belief. We have to believe it.
Okay,
You
here's
can't say that we don't believe it. That's not true. That's being intellectually dishonest to say that we're not believing. That's
no one said that. We did not ever say that we didn't believe. In fact, we were willing to meet you there and say, yes, everyone believes things. Everyone has belief about things. Here's the difference. Here is where we're coming from. That is different. You are saying, well, everyone has some form of faith. Everyone has some form of belief. Therefore, everyone is kind of subject to it. And I'm agreeing with you. I'm an agnostic. I don't think that anything is 100% provable to be absolutely objectively true. That said, I view faith or belief, or whatever word you want to use to describe it, as something to minimize. It's like saying, you should stop eating high fructose corn syrup, right? Everyone does it. So that means that I can justify eating large amounts of junk food. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, hey, if everybody is going to eat it, what you can do is try to minimize it as much as possible, even though it's everywhere, even though it's in everything, and it's really hard to get rid of it. What you can do is make a conscious effort to minimize your exposure to it and your absorption of it as much as possible. So that's kind of the place I'm coming from. I agree with you that everyone has belief and faith to some extent. My goal is to minimize how much faith I'm using in order to make sure that I am looking at the world as objectively as possible. Does that make sense?
I'm totally with you. But what I'm saying is, it's impossible for us to eliminate it.
Okay,
that's important to realize.
You've said it many times. We heard you. We're trying to take the conversation further, but I don't know if that's something you want to do.
I want to say that I love both of you guys, as I told you before.
Don't worry.
I know you don't want to hear. I didn't want to hear that, right? It's like
no. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, Jeff. I'll tell you. No, hold on. I came from a church that was very, very loving and did that, and over time, I wind up finding out that was a tool that a good number of people used to guilt and shame and hurt. And while I'm assuming that is not your goal, I hope you understand that it can rub you the wrong way, but we're trying to be as charitable as we can. So if you say you love us, awesome. Thank you, man. Send love right back at you. Okay?
Well, fake love makes you mad, right? And it makes me mad too, because it's fake. It ain't real. You know what I mean? I understand what you're saying.
We're going to hop over to the next call.
And so
take it easy, man. Jeff, actually as an afterthought, and I'm not trying to, I hope you're watching right now. Next time you call in about a different subject.
Or we can move on from where we landed today, which is, hey, we agree that everyone has an amount of belief or faith that they exercise. The goal is to minimize that as much as possible. You seem to agree with that, so let's move on from there. If we are going to minimize how much faith we're using in any given situation, why is your belief system grandfathered into that?
Yeah, but if you're calling in just to make the same point over and over, we have other people we can talk to, and we would like to have variety in this show. So we're going to go from there. Let's move on and talk to Daniel in Tennessee.
Sounds good to me.
Daniel, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about today?
Hi. So I'd like to talk about the moral argument for the existence of God.
Oh, yay. Okay.
All right.
Cool. So what about the moral argument? Actually, let's present it for everybody watching so we can all kind of go along together.
Okay. First off, kind of a fan of this show. I'm kind of a theist on the edge of atheism, kind of feel like.
If you have your own YouTube show, Theist on the Edge is a good name. Go for it.
Actually, yeah, that's not bad.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I just appreciate y'all and everything. But so the moral argument, if a God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. Second, objective moral values do exist, so God exists.
Right. So I think that the first place to go there would be to determine whether or not objective moral values exist.
Okay. Right. And so I think that we all have this kind of intuition about like what is right and what is wrong, which may or may not be different from morality, but I think that we have this intuition, and also we can kind of use the Bible. I know that the Bible is not perfect, and kind of the more I look into it, the more I see that it's nowhere near perfect as what I thought it was. But I believe that can also be used as a tool alongside our intuition.
So the idea of intuition being some kind of, nebulous Jiminy Cricket is something that I actually thought for a while before I really started trying to look into the biology of it. When I first came across it, my thought was kind of where you are, and then eventually I wound up turning it on its ear a little bit and going, okay, it's not whether or not we are moral, because we behave in a way that we say is moral, or we try to behave in moral ways. It's why do we do it? So we already behave in moral ways, or at least we try to. Why do we do it? So we're talking about objectives here, right? What in your definition is an objective moral? Because depending on your definition, we might agree with you.
Okay. So do you want like an example of an objective moral, or?
Well, I mean, if you have a definition, that would be best. If you don't, then we can try and ferret one out, with an example.
Okay. Objective moral. I don't know if I'm actually prepared to give a definition, but let's just take killing someone as an example. Could we do that, or anything else? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think killing. Let's dive down a little bit more to find something we can all agree with, because I'm sure killing to save your family would be okay. Killing to survive, or killing some kind of let's say indiscriminately killing for fun, with no actual societal benefit. Let's go real deep here. And very specific.
Totally agree.
Okay, good. We're all, okay. So we can all agree that that's bad, that is immoral, right?
Right.
What would be the difference between it being objectively immoral and just subjectively immoral?
So I think if we use like this principle, like if the majority, or if the overwhelming majority of a population of a culture, a specific culture, agree on something, then we can put that as like as an objective moral. I know Richard Dawkins. I have been reading some of his books, which are very interesting. I think he uses the term moral zeitgeist, and I believe that does move, but I believe that that's still an objective example that we can use, like some sort of the majority of the population of a certain culture.
So all of those, I'm with you. Well, so far, I mean, but we're still in subjective. I'm still trying to determine what the difference is between objective and subjective morals.
Right, because I think you are more aligning with what we think, which is that we determine what objective morality is based on the objective. I know a lot of theists wouldn't agree with you on that, and they'd say there's some kind of higher objective morality that exists outside of us somehow, that determines what is actually objectively moral or immoral. Is that where you're coming from, or are you more along the lines of, well,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yes. So yeah, I believe that it does come from God or this intuition, but I believe that we all kind of agree on it because, yeah.
So my question then
Not
becomes,
the Bible, but like in Rome. Oh, sorry.
no, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh,
Okay, caller first and then me.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm in Romans. I know it says, that God has written the law on our hearts. So I believe we can kind of use that too.
Okay, so my question then becomes, how do we differentiate between an objective morality that is written on our hearts and a sufficiently agreed upon subjective reality that everyone just agreed upon without that objective input?
And just to kind of help move that a little bit to, there are a lot of things that point toward the second one. One of those things being that we're hardwired as social creatures to behave in a very specific way. I mean, we are animals. If we weren't a social species, then a lot of the things that we would consider immoral, I think, wouldn't be the case. But since we are a social species, we put value on protecting and nourishing and growing the species at large. You have edge cases that we can talk about, but the general push for humanity is to flourish. You don't need that outside source. Okay.
I agree with part of the second half of what you said, Eric. I believe, I guess it is kind of hard to define objective moral, but overall, I believe we have to go basically on what partially the Bible says, but also on like I said, what is written on our hearts or like our intuition. But I don't know how that can be. I think that is what I've been calling objective.
Okay, so can I ask you a question? Moving off of this, onto this concept of using both the Bible and your intuition, or this shared objective, quote unquote, reality that we all live in. If the Bible tells you to do one thing and your intuition tells you to do something else, or that thing is wrong, how do you make that distinction? Because the Bible commands some people to do some really awful things. So I'm assuming that you wouldn't kill your child because God told you to, or commit genocide, or any of these things, because I think you're a good person.
Right.
But my question then becomes, if you're using both of these, then how do you determine what to do when they come into conflict?
Okay. I guess you would have to, I guess, go off of what your intuition is telling you. But then, so I guess,
yeah,
I guess I would say you have to go on your intuition. I mean, if the Bible tells you to kill your firstborn or whatever, in Abraham's case, I would not have done that. I mean, or if
So I guess to wrap this up, and then I'll let Eric take this where he needs to take this, but I would ask then, if you're going to run with your intuition, and if your intuition is more in line with these objective morals that the rest of society agrees on, why do you need the Bible?
Okay.
Yeah. And just to kind of give a short example about the other side, because there's the idea that, and I've talked to plenty of apologists who've said that objective morality is that which comports to the nature of God. And so if you're doing something that reflects God's nature, you're doing something objectively moral. And I explored that for a while. I actually, as a Christian, one of the first real big problems I had was in this static perfection. And I'm promise I'm not going way off, but follow me here for just a second. I asked my pastor if God has, I don't know, his hand a certain way, does that mean that that is the perfect way to hold your hand? My pastor said yes. I said, okay, so if he moves at all, he's then imperfect, because so God is just like a statue. And he said, no, God moves. And I said, okay, but then how is that? Does it stop being perfect when he moves his hand? He goes, yeah. I said, why? And he said, because perfection follows God. Right? So if you were to, and again, this might be way niche, way edge case, but I've heard it enough that I feel like it's worth sharing. And that is that if perfection follows God, if you come across that, then it's just God's subjective place. You're still not out of the woods. You just kick the can down the road. So anyway, I hope that helps.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that does. More to think about. Okay. Thank you all so much for taking my call.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Call back in once you've thought a little bit about it, and we'll have some more conversation.
Yeah. You sounded a little nervous, but you did great, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
You're good.
Okay.
Theist on the edge. I like that. Someone should run with that.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's see. Let's talk to Dawit.
Oh God, I know where this is going.
In Seattle.
Hello.
Oh, no.
Hello, Dawit.
Oh, hi.
Hi. What would you like to talk about today?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just want to talk about the politicization of science and scientific evidence and how that might misconstrued with the transition from being like a Christian to an atheist, and how there might be some politicization there.
Sure.
Interesting.
Absolutely. What's your take?
When it comes to issues such as climate change and other scientific issues, some of the data is misconstrued, not really told the full truth on, and I want to get your opinion on how that could affect someone's belief in transition, right? Like, let's say someone believes in a certain thing and they transition due to scientific evidence. If the evidence is politicized and not really told the full truth, can that mess up the transition of that person because it's not really the full truth of the story?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And that's why we as skeptics say, don't just believe what people are saying. Go do the research if you can. And that's kind of my passion is, are these sources good? Are there other sources that refute it? And if so, how well do they do that?
If only there was a show that showed people how to do that. If there was a show that could show people how to skeptic,
that would be useful.
Yeah.
That would be a useful show to have.
Stay tuned for V's new show. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, but I totally think that you're right on that to an extent. To discuss this in a more broad context, however, I don't think it's possible in a politicized world to have something that is truly apolitical. There are very few things that are truly apolitical, and very large things that these scientific communities are talking about, like climate change, by necessity become political because they become something that people care about and then vote accordingly. So I wouldn't say that the issue is that scientific evidence and science has become politicized, because it's always been politicized and we can't really escape that. But you're right in that you should be doing as much as you can to make sure that the information you're getting is accurate, so that you can make an informed decision when you're making a big decision based on, should I continue to believe this thing or not?
Absolutely. And go ahead. I was going to dovetail in, but if you want to respond.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just going to say, how do you exactly do that in a situation where most of the scientists who have like the laboratories, all the funding and whatnot, do the research? Isn't it kind of difficult to do maybe independent research?
Well, a lot of them are independently researching. Getting funding for some things is really, really difficult. And that's a problem. And it's a bottleneck to progress that really, really bites. I think we as a society need to work towards fixing that for sure. But as far as the kind of discriminating between evidence and trying to find that, part of that is the tools that we are trying to help give people. There are a lot of arguments that I've been given to support politicized issues that had to do with science and education. And it wasn't until I started learning what fallacies were that I started going, hey, you know what? That's not good reasoning. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you're false, but give me a better answer. If somebody's saying the Bible stood the test of time, that's why it's true. It could still be true, but not because of that. Give me a better answer, right? Apply that everywhere you can. The more you learn about ways that are bad, and really that's the scientific method, is we're not proving things true. We're trying to falsify them and see if we can determine whether or not it's false.
Right. And the truest things we know are just the things that have stood up to attempted falsification up to this point. Another thing that you can do if you're curious about more of these scientific concepts is there are a few really key things that you can look for to determine whether or not it's a valid source. So for one thing, look for something that's peer reviewed, right? Look for something that has had other independent eyes on it by other experts in that field, because that's going to make sure that a lot of different people whose goal is to falsify the information have looked at it and said, okay, this makes sense, I guess. We'll let it go on. We'll let it get published. Look for the kind of methodology they used, right? How big was the sample size, right? If they're talking to 20 people, that's useful information, but it might not be representative of the whole population, for example. So look at maybe how big the sample size was. Look if it was a double-blind study, which means they're controlling for bias better. You can also look at the kinds of publications that they're being published in. Are there requirements for being published? I know there are some creationist science magazines and publications that require you to be a Christian before they let you publish anything in it, which weeds out everything that they don't want to hear, right? So making sure that you're looking at all of these things can help you, even if you aren't a scientist yourself, determine whether or not it's useful and valid evidence to bring into your own worldview.
Also, just try to see if anybody's debunked it. Mm-hmm. If it's old enough, if it's been around long enough, odds are if it's that political, someone will have tried to break it down. And if you can find sources like that, then you can evaluate it from that other side and go, okay, was this a good method of breaking it down?
Mm-hmm. Of course. But in the sense that, so the reason why I asked the question is because I'm a pretty political guy, and I jumped into climate change, and I don't know if you guys know about the 97% number.
Yeah.
You guys know about that with climate change? Yeah. So so when I was younger, I heard that number and I thought, well, the science is settled and whatnot. And when I did my own research and I really looked into it, John Cook, who was the guy who did the study, the way he actually did his study was completely misleading. I mean, it wasn't 97%, or it is 97% in a certain sense, but he, out of a sample of 4,000 scientists, he only took the sample of like 67 of them, and then 65 of them agreed with the premise. 65 divided by 67 is 97%. So the way he came up with this whole study was misconstrued. And if you're a person who is looking at it from like, oh, you go on TV or you see a presidential candidate do a tweet about this, to you it's completely like, okay, the science is done. Like it's done 97% and whatnot. And it's very misleading to people who, they should do their research, right? Everyone should do their research, but it shouldn't even be said in the first place. Anything that's misleading in the scientific community, it should be 100% mainstream. Just, hey, like stop that, debunk it. Like you can't put that number out there if it's not true. And how do you know that certain scientists won't stick up for that or won't try to do that?
So that is a really, really good question. And I think that no matter where you are on whatever side of it, we need to hold our own accountable just as much as we hold others accountable. And that is true across the board. The fact that we don't hold each other's feet to the fire, but we're okay with prosecuting the other side, I don't like that at all.
Right.
Okay, so you agree with that in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, so
to an extent, I would also say that barring cases where somebody is obviously trying to obfuscate the facts and give you something that isn't accurate, we are still going to be, we are human, right? We are fallible. We are going to run studies that maybe aren't the best, and that's true across the board. And we also, and here's a point that if you watch Vice Rhino's stuff on YouTube, which if you're interested in science and politics and all of that and how to get better at determining good science, that's a great channel to go visit. Something that he brings up quite a bit is the idea that scientific journal reporters, so like for Wired or Scientific American, like all of these, for public consumption, reporting about science and scientific breakthroughs is fundamentally flawed because they try and make everything into this big thing, right? Oh my goodness, this just changed everything. We're all, reeling from this new experiment result. And meanwhile, all the scientists are like, no, that's kind of what we expected to find. You just need to sell newspapers, right? You just need to sell what's happening. So they're giving you the information, but they're giving it to you in a very skewed way that could very easily mislead a lot of people, which is a problem. So certainly while you're doing this research, and I applaud you for doing it, and you should continue to, make sure that you're going to primary sources instead of these secondary sources that are trying to hype things up in order to sell subscriptions.
Also,
I think,
if it's something like climate change, there are lots of studies, lots of data coming from lots of different places. So the example you gave, I think, is a really good one that you can actually really dive in. You're not limited to the single sample that you gave an example of. There are lots and lots of samples to pull from. And so long as you're using the best tools you have available to, like V said, going to the sources and determining, you already know about sample size, right? You already know about being selective. You already said that. Apply that and just keep going, because the more you study, the more you research, the more nuanced of an understanding you're going to have.
I mean, when it came to your guys' conclusion of being an atheist, I mean, how did you exactly come to that conclusion? Was it more scientific evidence? Was it more philosophical thinking? Did you look at studies or anything, or how is that transition like?
Sure. And for people who don't know, Dawit is a theist, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Me being an atheist, so let's see. A lot of it was philosophy. For me in the end. It started out as finding inconsistencies in the church, finding a lot of stuff that I didn't like in my own church, moving outside of it and thinking I didn't go to the right church, moving outside of that religion, thinking I didn't go to the right religion, moved to pseudo-spiritual stuff, maybe just to see if that was the case. And it actually wound up going full circle. And it was a philosophical argument with a rabbi that wound up making me kind of quit the whole thing altogether. I called it being an atheist. I just didn't care. I just left it alone. But over time, I wound up seeing and tuning in and seeing that there's a lot of damage that people do in the name of religion, and that it affects more than just the way people live their personal lives. It affects the way they vote. It affects the way they raise their children. It affects the way that they are neighbors and coworkers. And so it really does matter in a lot of different places. And when it came down to it, I realized that atheist best described in the atheist kind of movement, the way that I saw it being represented, I thought, you know what, that, and obviously it's atheist skeptic, where I went.
Right. And for me, I actually have I have a degree in journalism. So I was studying journalism and how to be a responsible reporter, while also taking theology classes and Bible history classes. And so I was using a lot of this more skeptical mindset of asking all these questions that I shared with you about the Bible and about the claims that people made about it. And I wasn't getting good answers. And a lot of the time I was actually met with either discomfort or hostility, because I wasn't supposed to be asking those questions. So for me, it was certainly an investigative process. Science came into it a little bit, especially for the evolution creationism perspective. But I know many Christians who are also evolutionary, like accept evolution. So that's not necessarily what broke it for me. What broke it was that steady look into research like you're doing with this and saying, okay, it doesn't seem to add up. I'm going to do more research. I'm going to figure out where this comes from. I'm going to see what the primary sources say. So that's kind of where I was led. And it certainly wasn't a goal to become an atheist. It wasn't something that I had as an end goal in mind. It's just that I did this to the point where I looked up one day and I was like, oh, I've sufficiently debunked this for my own self and no longer consider myself part of this group. So I guess this is the definition that fits me now.
Yeah.
Okay. And how extensive was that research? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, how extensive was that research in the sense that, I mean, I know with religion, to switch your opinion from either a Christian to an atheist, it must take years, right? I mean, because when it comes to politics, at least you can look at empirical data and then switch your opinion pretty fast. But when it comes to religion, I'm pretty sure that took years, right?
Oh, certainly. It took at least 4 years of active, rigorous research for me. Probably more as I started getting into it and then started coming out of it the other side as an atheist. But between 2014 and 2018 was just constant absorption of information, looking at church fathers, reading church history, I learned Koine Greek and transcribed scripture myself and then retranscribed it into English. So I was deep in it for a couple of years there.
Actually, wow, that's very extensive.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. How do you know that while in your journey from transitioning, how did you know that maybe you didn't have some sort of like I'm not saying you're biased, but in the sense that, you know how people, when they switch over and they see something they like, they might have a little bit of biases or.
I was absolutely biased. Absolutely. I wanted it to be true.
Okay.
I wanted it to be true. I was on the side of Christianity. I was like, all right, well, this doesn't seem to make sense, but I want it to be true, so I'm going to put that aside for now. So I was absolutely biased up until the point where I realized that I had debunked myself, which was a shock and difficult to go through and emotionally traumatic at points. But yeah, I was certainly biased, but I was biased to believe that there was a God and I was going to find that he was real.
Yeah, I totally relate with that. I honestly thought that the reason I wasn't getting it was my fault, that I was just too broken to understand that my fallibility, my brokenness as a human was what was preventing me from understanding it. And so, yeah, it made it a whole lot harder.
Yeah. But you said that you kind of had this moment, like not a moment, but maybe that moment was accumulation of all the research you had done and it kind of just snapped. But what was that snap? Do you remember?
There were a couple of moments that knocked me down a couple pegs. If you listen to Anthony Magnabosco's street epistemology at all, you'll see that he premises everything from 0 to 100. So at the beginning, I was pretty much 100, right? I was just like, there is no way this is false. And then there were a couple big things that knocked me down to 75 and then to 50 and then to 25, right? And I could go into all of this, but we do need to get to other calls as well. I'd say that the biggest thing, though, was just realizing that when I looked up after doing all of this research, I was like, okay, I want to go to church. What church subscribes to the thing that I now believe, which is not a triomni God, right? Not a maximally great God, that hell doesn't exist, that all roads lead to heaven if you're a good person, that reincarnation is a thing for some reason that was involved. Like, I looked up, I was like, oh, shit, no one believes this. Yeah. I've left the farm. I am in the woods. I don't know where I am. And then it was another process to weed out other options. So I looked into Buddhism, right? I looked into Celtic mysticism. I looked into pantheism and into Wicca. And I experimented in all these other ways. It wasn't a Christian today, atheist tomorrow situation. But eventually, now that I had that thought process in my head of skepticism and dismissing evidence that didn't stand up, it led me pretty consistently straight down to atheism.
Okay, cool. And my final question is just this. Do you guys know a specific place where I can get either primary sources or just any scientific journals or any place? I've tried Google Scholar, but I want to know if there's any other better places to get scientific data, studies, journals, and whatnot.
If you have a library card, Libraries, public libraries generally have access to things like JSTOR, which is really useful. I don't want to be self-promoting, but this is such an amazing call. I have a channel where I do this. All of this, the how to find primary sources, how to research, how to determine bias, all of these things.
Okay.
I'm just starting up, so there's not much there right now, but this is my jam. So I love this conversation and I'm excited to continue it.
I mean, I'll check it out. What's your channel called?
How to Skeptic.
How to Skeptic. Okay, cool. Hey, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This was an awesome call. Thank you,
Great
man.
call.
Thank you so much. All right, see ya.
Bye. Damn, that was a good call.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good call.
You're a little nervous.
I'm in my element. That was good. I did not expect it to go so well. That was good.
Good.
Okay.
Good. So we have, let's talk to Link in Washington.
Oh, Link's back. Yay.
Link, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Hey.
Hey.
Hi again, and all that.
Hello.
I just, real quick, sorry, I just wanted to say thank you guys for how patient you were last week with that call. It was very helpful. So,
Awesome.
What would you like to talk about today?
So it's funny because I was listening in sort of in the tail end of the last call, and he was talking about how like it was like a really long period of being sort of biased towards what she already believed. Or I'm sorry, she isn't right, but I don't know what the pronouns
That's
are.
okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's
Okay.
they, them, but you're
That's
fine.
okay. Okay. Sorry, when I looked up, or when I heard another episode, you said somebody said something about a cat cyborg, and I don't know what the pronouns are for that. But yeah, so but you were talking about how you had been sort of looking into it for a long time, and I'm in sort of a similar boat where like I would say for probably the last 4 years I've sort of been on this sort of journey towards skepticism, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And it's my religious beliefs are sort of on their last legs, and
Yeah.
all I have that's clinging me onto it is like for example, I know that I've been indoctrinated into it, but it's kind of hard thing to beat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
It
yes.
hurts. It is super uncomfortable. So you've got a couple more beliefs that are hanging on, like Mufasa, and we're just gonna claw those beliefs off the edge.
Wow.
What do you want to? Which one? It looks like you want to talk about Pascal's wager today.
Traumatize my inner child. Fine.
Well, I kind of wanted to bring up Pascal's wager in that, like, I recognize that Pascal's wager can't get you to one religion specifically. It just kind of gets you to the concept of religion at best. But I don't know if Pascal's wager was the right. Oh, hello.
Hi, we're listening.
Yeah, we've got you.
Oh, I'm sorry, my phone beeped for some reason. Yeah, no, I don't know if Pascal's wager was the right thing that I meant to talk about. It was more that my phone is beeping for some reason. It's more just the concept of hell, and like I don't want to burn forever for seemingly no reason.
Yeah. That's valid. Neither do I.
No, it does not sound like a good time.
No.
I wouldn't think so. No.
Yeah, but part of the response there is how many different hells are you afraid of going to?
Mm-hmm.
it's going to sound dumb, but some of them don't seem that bad. Like Hades in Greek mythology doesn't seem that bad.
Sure. So really, ultimately, one of the things that kind of gave me comfort is realizing that if we expand out Pascal's wager, then we have infinite numbers of God beliefs that have infinite hells that, you're just basically throwing a dartboard, throwing a dart at an infinitely large map and hoping you hit it. And the threat of hell is just infinitely large at that point. So we're all kind of boned. The fact that I was especially afraid of the hell that I was told about as a kid, and not so afraid of other versions of hells. I'm not super afraid of Mormon terrestrial existence. I'm not super worried about ideas where it's just outer darkness or separation from God. So what is it about that? And I think really what it comes down to is trauma. It comes down to having had that just burned into you. I mean, it's the same kind of thing that you've got to separate from when you talk about death in general. The idea that you're going to get to see them again means that you may not have given yourself the chance to grieve as much as you had. And even worse, what if you never got the chance to make amends? What if you never got to fix something in a relationship because you're like, you know what? It's just too hard. I'll do it when we're in heaven. I mean, there's so much there that, once you wind up decoupling those, you wind up, in a lot of ways, I don't know about there was grieving. It hit in a big way, realizing that a lot of people that I thought I was going to see again, I'm never going to see again. And so I'm drawing that parallel because the only reason I was grieving a second time is because I was sold some crap. I was sold a lie. I was sold bad information. And I wouldn't be missing it if someone hadn't told me I was going to get it. If you were going to tell me I'm going to get $1 million tomorrow, I'd get really, really excited. And then when tomorrow doesn't come, I'd be really sad. But it's only there because I was sold on it. Yeah, it's only there because I was sold on it. It's kind of...
No, it's like, it's... Sorry.
No, it's okay. The way... It's breaking your leg to sell you a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's. I think it was Hitchens that said, building or creating someone sick and commanding them to be well.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make that much. It has never really made that much sense to me. But it's like it seems to me like this is going to sound like a very, very unchristian thing to say, and I'm aware of that. But it seems to me like if God created hell, then the only person who deserves to go to hell is God, because that's the only infinite crime.
Ooh.
Can we put that on a shirt?
Damn.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I think that's one of the best quotes on this show. That's fantastic.
We have been put to shame.
I love it.
That is really good. I agree with you.
It's the idea for an infinite punishment for a non-infinite crime seems infinitely unjust. So,
by the way, the live chat's going nuts.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh shit!"
Link's got the mic drop of the week. Very nice.
Panning next week, it's been Link on the show.
Right.
It's just like, hi, I'm here now. I've been conscripted.
That's good, man.
And here's another thing that I know helped me a lot while I was grappling with a few leftover thoughts and leftover emotions from my time being indoctrinated, which is really just understanding the biological reason why. And there's this thing called neuroplasticity. And it means that you can create neural pathways in your brain that allow you to get from point A to point B faster. That's why it gets easier to do things as you practice them. Like if you start playing piano, it's going to be difficult. And then as you continue to practice, that will get easier because your brain is actually coding certain neural pathways in this thing called myelin. And myelin is a physical thing that makes your brain able to go from point A to point B easier. That's muscle memory, that's repetitive thoughts, that's all of this. And if you were indoctrinated as a kid and told these certain thought patterns over and over again, that's physically encoded in your brain right now. That's not just you hanging on to things or something from the outside trying to get in and tell you things. That's a physical reality in your brain, and it is going to take time to actually build new neural pathways and shut them down. It is very possible. I've done it, and it's ultimately the most impactful way of healing that I've found from this religious indoctrination. But it is a physical thing that you're going through right now. So I'm not surprised that this is something that keeps coming up. And I'm certainly not concerned about it, if that makes sense. I'm not worried that somehow it's you tapping into some external reality. It's you dealing with the fact that your brain has been literally molded by this indoctrination, and you have to go through the work of moving those neural pathways into different formations. And if that's something you want to do, it's doable. Therapy helps, but it's not always the only thing that can help with that. So it's stuff like having conversations like this and making yourself aware of the fact that's what you're going through. So there's also that component to it as well, which I know I found helpful when I was going through it. Yeah,
I really have not. I was going to say cognitive behavioral therapy, and you're like, yeah, therapy and talking. What V said. As far as that point's concerned. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of my problems is that I consider my like a lot of people can like say that like my parents are like hyper religious, which in my case is relatively true, but like, or they can say that like my pastor was very, very strict or something like that, but I would honestly put a lot of the indoctrination sort of on my own shoulders. I think that mine is sort of relatively self-induced. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, but, no, totally. And it doesn't make it any less impactful. You can, in the same way you can decide to play piano and get good at it, you can decide on a thought pattern or a belief system and get good at thinking in that way. It doesn't mean that it's any less impactful to your brain if you were the one who put yourself in that position. And certainly that's not something to kick yourself about. That's preferred in society, right? That's the thing that you're supposed to do. That will create the conception that you are a good person, that you're trustworthy, all of these things. So of course you're going to put yourself in that position. Right. But moving away from that, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easier to move away from, or that you should be able to just flick it off like that. So yeah. And
a lot of us that we do that for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
I know personally I was taught shame in a very real way, and I still deal with that. Mm-hmm. And is it helping anybody? No. But when you're taught to punish yourself like that, you do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to continue to find different neural pathways constantly. Hell is a big one. It is one of the biggest ones. It is the one that we talk about the most on this show because so many people, that's their last thing that really will get them out. But you're going to continue to do that. And it's not just going to be religion-based. It's going to be things that were informed by your worldview on religion. And you're going to say, oh, wait, I used to not like that person because they weren't religious. I still don't like that person, but I don't know why anymore. There's no basis for it. I should like them now. So it's a constant process, and it should be. But just because it's taking you a while doesn't mean that you're behind. It doesn't mean that you should have already gotten over this. This is your process. It's your brain. And depending on how eager you are to change it, it will take, more or less time, and both are okay.
And just like grief, it can come in waves. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can wake up one day and be like, what am I doing? There are people who say, oh, in a moment, I changed my mind completely. Mm-hmm. That's very hard for me to believe because you double back and you look at it again and you look at it again. And the more and more you go back, the more you kind of ground yourself. And the more you work on those tools, how do I know what I know? Okay, what do I have? What do we have? Let's build up. Mm-hmm. And so if you have one of those days where it's just like when fear strikes, that's it. That is also normal.
Yeah.
It's that's what happens with trauma. It's a form of PTSD. Actually, we had Daryl on, Daryl Ray from Recovering from Religion, actually talked about religious trauma syndrome, and that is just way more prevalent than most people know.
Mm.
Yeah,
it's funny because like I felt like I was on. It kind of felt like I was on this like this track, this road out. Because honestly, I think that the only problem I have with the show is that I'm all caught up. Now I have to wait until Sunday to listen to a new episode.
nice.
Like I've watched a lot of skeptic content, and I was on this easy road out, and then 2020 hit, and everything went to absolute shit. And now, like, I don't know, it's weird. It has kind of thrown me for a loop a little bit, which I think it has to a lot of people.
Yeah, and it can be very tempting to move back into a comfortable space where everything's going to be okay and this is all part of a plan, and all of those kind of fluffy language that religion uses to make you feel okay about things. But what I'm seeing more and more is that most of the stuff that we're dealing with right now is people. It's not like there are elements that are not, they're outside of our control, but the reason things are so bad is because people are not acting in the way that they should. And a lot of that is due to the fact that people are willing to sit back and say, everything will be fine, God's got it, it's part of a plan, I'm not going to worry about it. So that comfort can come at the cost of actual progress and the safety of other people. So I understand completely that this is something that, might kick you back a couple of steps. That's fine. It's 2020. It doesn't count.
Is that what we're going with?
That's what we're going with. It doesn't count. It's a gap year from life.
Okay.
Yes, that is the year's motto. I'm fine with that motto for this year.
There you go. But so be gentle with yourself. If you have to take some steps back and reevaluate, that's fine. Everybody's doing that in some way, shape, or form this year. But the fact that you're aware that this is an environmental thing that's pushing you in a direction and that it's influencing the way you're progressing is very good. And as long as you are aware of that and aware that, okay, I'm thinking this thing, it's a result of what I'm experiencing. It's a result of what's going on in the world. How do I decide if this is accurate or just my reaction? Is the whole ball game.
Okay.
Yeah. It sounds like you're doing good though, man. And keep in touch. Let us know how you're doing.
Yeah.
Also, if you're not busy through the week, I've been doing little lunchtime live streams on Facebook. There's a new Facebook fan group for Talk Heathen. Lots of stuff and a really awesome community. Also, our Discord is awesome. So definitely.
I joined that.
Nice.
Perfect. Wonderful.
Good.
Great.
Then we'll see you after the show.
I recommend it. Yeah, they've been very welcoming. So.
Oh, good.
Good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. We're gonna head on to the next call. Take care of yourself, okay?
Yeah. Thank you again so much.
Absolutely.
Ugh. I love that Nightbot has officially gotten on the link train. 5 people think God is the only being deserving of hell.
Nice.
I like it.
We have the best crew.
We really do.
So before we dive into the next call, I do want to thank our patrons. It's that time. Look at that. Already ready at the bottom.
Nice.
So if you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. That's patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. And you can be one of our top 5 patrons. Our top 5 patrons today are Dingaloo, Jay Friedman, Kamal, Ribow, and Ward Nippling. It is a 5-way tie.
Wow. That's impressive, you guys.
It is.
Nice.
It is. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. Really, one of the things that doesn't get communicated enough is also at the $1 level, that $1 patronage is so stabilizing.
Yeah.
Because if you have somebody at, $500 an episode and you're like, cool, we can manage these different, programs and things like that. And then something happens and they back out. you're looking at a huge change
Yeah.
versus everybody goes, you know what, I can kick in a buck.
Yes.
And 12 people, had something go on in their life and they've got a pull that means that we're still stable. And that's true for all content creators, actually. So it really does matter, and it does give us a lot of comfort. So
yeah, all you $1, $3, $5 patrons, y'all are what keeps us steady.
you are. Absolutely. All right. That said, let's dive into our next call. I really want to talk to Kendall in Seattle.
Let's do it. Another Seattle caller. I like it.
Kendall, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Oh, hey.
Hey.
Yes. Hey, what's up? So, here's my question.
Sure.
If I or whoever proved Christianity true, would you become a Christian by repenting your sins?
Yes.
Sure.
You would?
Yeah.
I don't see why not, if it's true.
I mean, yeah.
Wasn't the answer you were expecting, huh?
Yeah. So I mean, there are things that I'd be pretty ticked off about. I think that as far as management is concerned, I think that God could use some corporate sensitivity training. But that being the case, the whole idea of what we do, the whole idea of skepticism is we want to know what's true about the world. If it turns out that was true about the world, then we're not going to plug our ears and pretend it doesn't exist.
Right. And here's the thing. Here's where I come in. You could prove that the Christian God was real, and I would not become a Christian with just that. You would have to prove that Christianity was real and accurate, which includes convincing me that sins exist and that they have a detrimental effect on myself and
I took that as a package deal.
See, but that's the thing, and I want to make that distinction. I would not say Christian God exists, cool, bow down. That wouldn't happen. What would happen is if you could then say, hey, all of the things that this Christian God is asserting is also true. Like, you are a sinner and you deserve hell, and, hell is just. And if you can convince me of all of those things, then sure, I'd buy in because I'm a skeptic and I want to know what's true. And if that was true, cool, I'm there. But it's not a package deal for me. It would be a two-step process. It would be first convince me that God is real, and then convince me the religion is real, because there's a gap there.
Good call. That's a really good call. I revised my, yes, that one.
Can I make a distinction, though, for myself in terms of what I mean by Christianity?
Yeah, sure.
As well? Sure. As you may know or not, there's a difference between obtaining salvation and having a full-blown relationship with Christ.
I've heard this theory
believers.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were believers.
It's true, though. Right.
I mean,
I just wanted to remind you that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Once you kind of drop the belief that God exists at all, it kind of becomes it doesn't really factor in. You know what I mean? It's like asking us how our walk is.
Right. Well, I just
we're not
wanted
walking.
to have that distinction.
Sure.
Yeah. I just feel like there needed to be a distinction there because, well, I don't want to talk about it. That's an important distinction, that all that's necessary for salvation is to believe that God exists, one God, and that he revealed himself through the person of Jesus Christ, his life, death, and resurrection, and then repenting. So if those two things are true, are proven true, would your answer still be yes?
No, not necessarily, because good. You're breaking it down. I like that. I think that's good. So if you prove that God existed, the God that you believe in existed, and then you also prove that Jesus was somehow a representation of this God, perhaps this God incarnate or a piece of the God, or however it is that you define it, those two things don't equal the third thing, right? I can say, I had breakfast today, coffee is good, therefore I don't know, my car's out of gas. right? It's like you can prove the first two things true if you wanted to, but those two things together don't necessarily equal the third thing being true. So I could agree with you if you provided sufficient evidence that God existed and Jesus was the Son of God, but those two things together don't necessarily get me to now I have to repent for my sins.
Yeah, but okay. Then how can you say your skepticism, your atheism is based upon truth and not just personal preference?
Well, I'm having trouble understanding
I'm
that.
a little confused. How did you get from that to the next thing?
Sure. Because it's not really doing anything. You're not required to do necessarily anything. The only thing is that you believe or accept the truth that God exists and that He revealed Himself in Christ. And the only thing that you show is that in terms of doing is just repenting. Pray and repent. That's just saying, yes, I accept that. I agree. That's it. That's all it means when you repent. And so when you say no to that third part, that just says to me that that truth is not.
Oh, well, to be clear, I'm saying no to all three parts. I'm granting you that if you could prove the first two parts, then I still would need more proof.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in practice, if someone were to, and I'll take this away from Christians, I'll say if somebody were to turn up and start killing non-Muslims and they said, hey, are you Muslim? And I would say, Allahu Akbar, because that's not hurting me. And also I would be dead otherwise. If it turned out that God wanted me to, do the hokey pokey or toss me into eternal suffering, if I found out that was true, I would do the hokey pokey. Should I? That's a different topic,
right?
Because that God would be a moral monster.
Right. I'm not saying I should. Yeah.
No. Yeah, it's not whether or not the should, but if you were to prove all of those tenets, and there are a lot of people in the comments who are saying that's not provable. We're meeting Kendall here so that we can make another point that doesn't always get made,
right?
And
right.
But the question that I'm wondering is, you're saying personal preference, and I don't understand that at all. What's the difference between truth and personal preference, and how are you making that distinction?
So that's a great question. The difference is that personal preference, there's no rational justification for something. It's like, I like vanilla cake versus chocolate cake. There's no rational argument or basis for why you like that. You just like that. You know what I'm saying? No one's going to argue against that. But in terms of let's just say subjective morality, which is not the same thing, you're making an argument. You're saying, no, I don't. And then you're saying, you're making your case. Maybe there's other standard that you're basing it off of, and which you would have to do in order to make it a real case. And yeah, do you understand that?
So actually, I'm understanding the difference now between where you're kind of going in the direction that I go, and that is that I think we have different definitions for rational. And so when you're rational,
empirical.
Well, no, rational is a good term. Rational is a good term.
Okay.
Because
both,
if you want me to see what you're doing and decide that that's rational, it's because you can give us sufficient evidence to justify your action. Somebody can be rational in their own head all they want, but as soon as they start interacting with people, they're going to say, why are you doing the hokey pokey, Kendall? Well, let me give you the evidence. So you should be doing it too. So when you're applying that, I guess I don't understand where you're drawing this difference. I mean, if I could show you that that my brain just dumped a whole bunch of pleasure chemicals as soon as I ate chocolate, then I could say, hey, this is best for me. Why? Because compared to all the other flavors, I enjoy this the most. Right? That would be rational.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know, but I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't say that works for everybody.
I guess that would be okay. I mean, if that's the case, then it's no longer necessarily a personal preference. You're making an argument. You're saying it hurts you or something like that, right? You would have to have some sort of something on a empirical basis, I would think.
Well,
Well, they're not necessarily mutually
that's an empirical.
It's just that they're not inexorably linked.
Yeah. So now you're talking about empiricism, right? Whether or not we can see, smell, taste, touch, interact with, or to, verify something. Do you think that there are moral decisions that are empirical? Like, can you empirically prove moral judgments? Can Kendall do that?
Moral judgments? Oh, wow.
An ought statement, right? You ought to do this or ought to do that.
Oh,
Is there empirical proof to that?
Obviously, you can. No, I don't think you can. No, I think. Yeah, no. No.
I agree with you, which means that morality is subjective. It sucks, but that's kind of where we're at. It makes us uncomfortable. But yeah, you can't empirically prove those things. Now, if you decided, hey, we're going to make an objective, we're going to decide that human flourishing is the objective, then you can have objective truths to that, because you can, look at a situation and go, which possible decision can I make is going to lead most towards human flourishing? And that would be the objectively best or most moral thing to do. But ultimately, unless you've got something like that, it's subjective.
Well, do you have time? Okay. I just want to say that I feel like you're confusing epistemology with ontology when you say that. It seems like you're trying to explain how we know what is right and wrong. And, there are a lot of ways people get to that, including the Bible and things like, evolution. There's no argument there. But what I'm trying to say is that why are there things that are right and wrong at all? How do you ground the concept of right and wrong, not determine what is right or wrong? Let's just say, for example, let's say X is evil, which is torturing babies for fun, and Y is good, which is helping people in need. So the question is, says who?
Exactly.
You're able to.
Yeah.
What I'm saying? Yeah. So that's why I bring it. Okay.
Is your statement about torturing babies an ontological statement or an epistemic statement? Because one, you're right, is the what just is, and the other is what you think. And so if you're saying that there are objective truths about the world, or objective morals, then that would be an ontological statement.
Right.
And based on our conversation up until this point, it looks like we moved out of ontology and into epistemology.
Which is good, because we need epistemology to back up ontological statements.
But it looks like maybe we kind of uncoupled, or derailed along the way. Yeah. So
yeah. That's not where. Okay. Maybe you guys answered it. I don't know. Maybe I guess that.
You know what?
Someone settles it.
It's okay. It's recorded. No, it's recorded. So I'll go back and watch it. You go back and watch it and call back.
Right. Sure. We can do that. That.
Sounds good.
It's much better conversation than, I'll leave it as that, actually. This is great. Coffee, good luck. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I think we know where that one's going.
Well, I've had lots of less productive conversations with apologists who would not go down that road and talk to us about it. But I liked it. That was good.
No, I think we were a little. I think it took us a minute to get into the actual meat of the conversation, but I liked where we ended up.
Me too. The fact that he moved to talking about epistemology and ontology is like, oh, hey, hold on a second.
Speaking that language.
We can dive in a little deeper here. We can kind of peel back a couple layers that we don't always get to.
I got excited about that.
Yeah. So let's rapid fire through a couple of these because I want to make sure that we get a chance to talk to as many people as we can. Let's start with talking to Ulf in Norway. Ulf, how do you pronounce your name? Is it Ulf?
You could say Ulf.
Ulf?
But I think Ulf, yes.
Ulf, okay.
Okay, sounds good.
What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, first I want to say god dag, which is in Norway, to Vi and you, Eric. It's as the old adage goes, I'm a long-time listener and first-time caller.
Rock on.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
Is my sound okay then?
You sound good, yeah.
You sound good.
Okay, excellent. Now, as I said in the to the screen, the call screener, I live in Norway. I grew up here, and when I was a child, they tried to raise me in sort of a Baptist fundamental kind of thingy. I think they started around when I was 6 years old. But when I was 8 or 9, I figured out I can't buy this. It's too silly. But it's as you see at the end of it, I ended up having PTSD, suffering from it because it was the usual. It was a physical violence, threatening, and a lot of the stuff you talked about earlier about using hell. I could get a 2-hour both physical beating and yelling at because the hell is real. And it's something I remember Dilahunty say a lot. They're much better at explaining how hell is than they are at heaven. So, but we have something called it's like a pop science magazine in Norway where it says illustrated scientists, and it's just pop science. It's fun. I read it when I was a child, and back in I think it was 89 or 90, there was an article about global climate change and global warming and the hole in the ozone layers and stuff like that. And when they explained to me about heaven, I picture like there was a hole in heaven, but they had to be like those yellow cones you see on the road with the damage around the hole in heaven, whereas people would fall down. So to me, heaven didn't make any sense. So after that, I was thinking about around 8, and after that, I never bought anything. They bribed me with skiing resorts and everything else they tried. But it was kind of weird and kind of sad. And the things that I've seen from people in America about how the Baptist, like those kind of fundamentals work, it's less of the gay bashing and stuff here, but it's a lot. It's the brim and hellstone and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, at age 12, they had me to I was considered an adult then, so I had to go up in front of the church and tell them that I accepted Jesus into my heart. And I just said no. And I wasn't allowed to play with any of the children anymore. When they went visiting and doing stuff, the neighbor took me. And when I was 15, we got out of. My mom moved away, and we got away from him. And yeah, it's been okay after, but as usual after I kid.
Yeah. Shit. I'm sorry to hear that. That's honestly, I didn't realize that fundamentalist Baptists were a thing in Norway, which is, kind of sad to hear, but also good on you for getting out. Good on you for saying no and putting your foot down, man.
And good on you for sharing.
Yeah.
Because if it's that rare, then there are likely a lot more people just like you. And when you talk about it, when you share it, it lets people know that they're not alone. And yeah, it absolutely sucks that you went through it.
Yeah.
But at least take comfort in knowing that telling people that they're not alone. It sounds like you're doing better. It sounds like you recognize that there's PTSD and there's something to work through, that there's progress and a forward direction. And I know that for a lot of people, when they're in it, it doesn't look like there's any way out. A lot of people.
Yeah, it's.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's a bit delay. It's a bit old. No, I've been able to talk about it for a long time. But when I was younger, in my early 20s, I wasn't sure why we were having different problems. I'm also ADHD, and that plays a role in it as well. So I wasn't sure why I had problems and reacted and having panic, anxiety attacks and stuff like that. But I got the diagnosis in my mid-20s. And actually, by the end of my 20s, then I understand that there was something called atheism, and I'm 38 now, and I've accepted that. Okay, I'm kind of an atheist. I don't believe any of this, and I always loved science. I read books. Before I read magazines, but now I buy books like Sean Carroll and Einstein, and just love the stuff. Science is the way. I think it's just really enjoyable.
Good.
But yeah, I have no problem speaking about it for some reason. It doesn't affect me. I can remember how my dad. I don't want to make it too dark. I'm going to try to keep it PG-13 here, so it can trigger someone else. But I can remember vividly stuff that happened to me. But it's like, oh, I remember that. Oh, that was not nice. But, okay, kind of sucks. But I'm going to shout out to a woman I know called Aisha, because she's the one that told me to call in. She's from the U.S. as well. We talked a lot, and she helped me. Yeah, she helped me a lot and talked to me a bit, so I can understand how racism works in the U.S. And she explained to me about religion and stuff like that. So she's been a great help, and yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad you guys are connecting.
Absolutely.
That's really, really good. Yeah, honestly, I feel you. I can remember things that happened to me, and I can be dispassionate about it enough to be able to share it with other people. And I consider that to be, for lack of a better term, a blessing. Because it means that I can be somebody who is a voice, and it doesn't take too much out of me emotionally. But I would encourage you to make sure that you are taking care of yourself emotionally too, and getting whatever help you need, whatever therapy, talking with other people who are on the show is a great step. Also talking to people on Discord or on our fan page on Facebook, making sure that you're part of this community, Ulf, because you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's encouraging words, and I do. I even went as far that I always wanted to start a new YouTube channel, gaming. I never made it up what I want to do. But I did now, and it's just basically me. I'm going to do some personal stuff, talking about my upbringing, how I dealt with this, and more detail surrounding this. And probably some gaming as well, because I am a nerd after all. But yeah, because I've talked to so many people during my life now, and they explain that I don't understand that you have also been through it, and how did you deal with it? How do you see it? How do you feel it now? And I have good responses to it. So I think it's a good thing I can do to help out and maybe help someone else, like you guys do.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to leave you. Don't take up all the time. But I have one last question for you guys. If the criteria for not going to hell is to dance the hokey pokey, how do you deal with the people in the wheelchair? Differently able.
Made to be broken.
I think that's going to be a problem for myself. I think in defense of them, I would refuse to do it as well.
There you go.
Fair enough.
There you go.
Yeah. But thanks. Have a good evening and enjoy the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was nice talking to you.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you can help people deal with it. So I don't want to share too much. I know I've shared some, but I guess if it helps, I had a similar situation, and I was lucky enough to get put into therapy as a young kind of preteen, early teenager, and this does count. I promise. I'll just give me a second. I remember telling my therapist, how am I going to know how to be a man? How am I going to learn how to be a functioning adult if I don't have that role model?
Yeah.
And they said, well, you know what not to do. They said, what kind of husband do you want to be? So, well, I know what I don't want. So, go write it down. What kind of brother do you want to be? Oh, okay. All right, I'll write it down. What kind of partner? What kind of friend? What kind of son? And I wrote those lists down. And I am 33 years old, and I still have those lists memorized.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me a direction. You don't have to have that. There are a lot of people who say, oh, well, I come from a really bad background and it justifies my shitty behavior. You know, there is working through it, and there is going, hey, what kind of person do you want to be? Because you get to decide that. So anyway, as much as that helps, let's go on. Let's talk to Robert in Toronto. Robert, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Well, thank you. I wasn't going to talk about PTSD, but a lot of my childhood, in and out of the hospital, religious indoctrination from being Jewish, I feel like a lot of my childhood was stolen from me because of that. That's not what I call it. It's not why I called, because I am over that. But a lot of your callers call in and they use personal experience to prove that there is a God. And I have had a lot of personal experiences, and I've had a lot of, I've also had head trauma, and I've learned a lot from being a skeptic and listening to you guys and Richard Dawkins and not listening to the voices in my head. But I have a story that is the most real story, the most memorable thing that's ever happened to me. And I guarantee if I believed in God when this happened, it would have been 100% proof, and I'd be talking to everybody about it. So I live in a house that faces
Robert?
west.
Robert?
Yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. The thing is, we're running short on time. But I just want to, if you want to sum it up quickly so we can, engage with it a little bit, then we're going to move on to the next caller.
Oh yeah. So basically, I have because of head trauma, I have things that happen to me, voices in my head, things that sound really real, and want to convince me that there's something outside of my head that is a god or an alien or whatever. And I hear all these stories, and people need to know, and people need to learn that what's coming from inside your head is inside your head. No matter how real it seems, no matter how much you want to believe that it's a god or whatever, it all comes from inside your head. And I want people to know that. I want people to call in with personal experience and say, take a step back and say, maybe it is coming from inside my head. Maybe I need to take a skeptical view of this and ask why it's coming from inside my head.
And there's a difference between hearing voices and those voices. Yeah. So you're not denying the fact that you've had these experiences, and we're not going to deny them of you, right? You're not going to lie and say you didn't experience this. The difference is whether or not that corresponds to reality, outside of you.
And my life says that it doesn't correspond to reality.
Exactly. So and I think that's something that we can actually help a lot of atheists with is when you say, no, you didn't experience that. You know what? There's a chance that for whatever reason, they feel like they did, or after the fact, that is what their memory is. You don't need to say you didn't experience it. What you need to say is, does that experience match reality, or is that something that just happened in your head? That's a really good distinction to make, Robert.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's right. And to this day, I still hear voices in my head, but I control them.
Oh, rock on, man. To good mental health, my friend.
Thank you very much. I work very hard every day, but I wanted people to listen to that story and know that it's not, it can be real in your head, but it doesn't correspond to reality.
Yeah, I love that distinction.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Absolutely.
For sure. Thanks for calling in. Wow. I think that may be the first time that we were like, hey, can you summarize? And then we got a summary.
Yeah, it was good.
That was impressive.
It was. And it's a really good point. It means that we can still have a few minutes to talk to Aaron in Georgetown. Hi, Aaron. You're live with Eric and V. Aaron in Georgetown, Texas. Going once. Going twice. 3. See, I'm counting this time.
It's impressive.
Okay, pop in the back in the queue.
You can count.
Oh, that was pretty good.
That was a good episode. I loved the callers this
Yeah,
week.
me too. Me too. So I think we've still got time to hop into the Discord. So if you want to join us in the Discord, we're going to be doing a Q&A before 3 o'clock when the hosts of the nonprofits are going to be hopping in. Again, hey Mark, hey Lily, hey Katie, hey Jenna, happy birthday. We love you. Like, can we move over to the crew cam and see that amazing crew?
Woo!
You see that person right down at the bottom? That person there, that's Katie. It's Katie's just celebrating her birthday, and so is her daughter Lily. We have an amazing crew and an awesome kitty cat I'm seeing there. Vern, very nice.
A questionable logo on that hat there.
We just want to say thank you. We would not be able to do this without you. Obviously, you were working long before we got here, and you'll be here long after we're gone to make sure this goes out as a podcast. After having created content, it is such a big difference between having to make sure that the audio and the video and everything and the stream feed and interacting versus having all of that freed up just so that you can host. It's incredible, and it is something we sincerely appreciate. Alrighty. Oh, Facebook group. If you haven't joined the Talk Heathen Facebook fan group, looks pretty cool. I see some really awesome people in there. V, thank you for joining today.
Of course.
Can we throw up some love rings? Let's see. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yay.
I love that.
That's always fun.
Okay. So whether or not you believe, if you're putting yourself at risk due to all of the stuff going on during this crisis, it feels like it's just got no end sometimes. But the fact is a lot of people are putting themselves in danger to make sure that we have basic necessities, stocking grocery shelves, working in hospitals, doing so many different things. Thank you. Be safe. And what you're doing your part, and we're going to do ours. For those of you who don't believe, this is your community. This is a place where you can tune in for a little while and know that you're not the only one. That whatever trauma that you've been through doesn't need to be there your entire life. You can change those neural pathways over time.
And you've got a community to catch you when you come over to this side.
Yeah. But to those of you who do believe, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. See you next week.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?